In this lesson, we'll begin using our Pathfinder panel and our Shape Builder tool to help us complete a logo. Alright, so in previous lessons we walked through all the shape modes and all the pathfinders here in the Pathfinder panel, and we also learned how to use the Shape Builder tool. Now we're going to go ahead and put those to use in working on this logo here. Now let me go ahead and just back up just a little bit. I've done a little bit of work before this lesson, so I want to show you what I've done. Let's go ahead and come to our Layers panel, and we've got two layers here, one for vectors, and then we've got a template layer here where I've placed in a sketch. Now if you look in your project files, you'll find a sketch.psd file, and that's actually this logo that I've sketched out initially. So what I've done is placed it into Illustrator here, and I've gone ahead and traced the contour of this logo using my pen tool on a new layer. And you can see that right here. Now I've also traced a couple of other shapes from it up here. You can see I've traced the eye, sort of this highlight on this cat's cheek, and I've also traced the inside of this flamed area off the back of the logo. You can see right here, this little line right here on the inside edge. So say this is a logo maybe for a football team we're working on. So maybe it's called the Hellcats. So instead of you watching me trace around the contours of this with my pen tool, we're just going to jump right in and think about how we can use what we've learned so far to help us continue with this logo. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and zoom out here, and let's go ahead and drag in this first shape. Let's just select this shape right here. Let's go ahead and drag that down. I'm going to drop that right about there on top of our logo. So, you know, if I want to make sure that's in exactly the right space, I can go ahead and switch to outline mode. We can do that simply by coming up to the view drop down and choosing outline right here. Keyboard shortcut for that is Control Y. Or we can come over here to our vectors layer. In our layer panel, hold down Control and click the little eyeball right there. You can see we jump into outline mode. Now outline mode is a really great mode to trace artwork in, because all it concerns you with is the actual paths you're drawing. So you can see here that all we're concerned with is the paths. We're not concerned with the color of the paths, the stroke applied to them, or even the fill color. All we're concerned with is the path's position in relation to our artwork. And you can see that, you know, I drug that in and it looks to be just a little bit off. Let's go ahead and drag that up just a little bit here. Drop it right about there. Maybe nudge it down just a spot or two. Alright, so we've got that into position. Let's go ahead and switch back out of outline mode and hide our layers panel. And let's think about what we can do to maybe cut this black shape out of this red shape right here. Now, if you remember in previous lessons, all we really would need to do is select both these two shapes and maybe do a minus front shape mode. Now, that minus front shape mode could be destructive in just clicking that button, or we could alt-click that to create a compound shape. We could also do this using the Shape Builder tool, just simply by holding down our Alt key and clicking on this shape right here to subtract it from the shape behind. So there's a lot of different ways to perform various actions here, so you have a lot of choices. Now obviously in building this logo, we're probably not going to touch every single one of these shape modes and every single one of these pathfinders, and to be honest, there's some of these that I use more than others. So let's go ahead and look at maybe a non-destructive way of doing this. I'm going to go ahead and create a compound shape by alt-clicking on the minus front shape mode. And remember, a compound shape is going to allow us to revert back to the original shapes if we ever need to. So that's really a good thing to keep in mind. Now we've gone ahead and created the illusion that we have this hole here in our object, and it looks like it's in about the right spot. Now let's say that maybe I want to nudge that down one more time. Maybe I'm just being a little bit concerned with how thin it's getting right here. So let's go ahead and select our object here. Let's jump into it by double-clicking and isolating it. We can select the individual shape right there and then nudge it down one more time, maybe two. Alright, let's double-click outside of our objects here, or click this arrow back to get out of isolation mode, and we've repositioned that where we want it to go. Now I've got a couple of other objects up here. We've got an eye shape and we've got this highlight. Let's go ahead and drag those down. And we'll switch into outline mode, hitting Control Y to position those in relation to our sketch, and it looks like I got pretty close. We might nudge those down one time with our arrow keys, but that looks like it's in a pretty good spot. So we'll jump back out of outline mode again, hitting Control Y. And let's just go ahead and do the same thing. Let's go ahead and see if maybe we can add these two shapes to the compound shape that we just created with this flame area right here. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and select that red shape behind, and let's go ahead and hold Alt and click our minus front option again. So you can see here that we're able to add to that compound shape. Now, it might be an interesting thing to keep in mind is that maybe we want to release this compound shape. We want to go back to our original shapes. Now, in doing that, we hit this Release Compound Shape option right here in our Pathfinder menu, and it's going to release those in the order that we added them. So the first two shapes to be released are the eye and this highlight. If we go in and release this shape, the compound shape again, we'll release out this flame right here. But, I don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and hit undo and take that eye and that highlight back out of this shape here. Now, let's go ahead and continue on with this. And, we've created this negative space right here. And in my sketch, I've kind of began sketching a flame right here inside this negative space. Maybe we're going to do this in a different color. So, speaking about color, let's go ahead and take a look at our swatch panel, because there's a couple things in here that I want to just bring to your attention. I've got a couple of custom swatch groups here. Now, I got these out of the Cooler extension. And if you want to come up to your window drop down with me, look under Extensions and then Cooler. You're actually going to find the Cooler panel here. Now, this is a direct connection to the Cooler website with Adobe. Now, you will have to have an internet connection on your computer in order to be able to plug into that website, but what it'll allow you to do is search based on keywords for sets of color swatches. So you can see here that this first color swatch that I've added is called To a Flame. In order to add that, just search for To a Flame here, click on this little arrow out to the right of it, and select Add to Swatch Panel. That'll add it over here as a custom swatch group. Now this next one, if I mouse over this folder right here, you can see it's just called Fire. I would just go ahead and search, if I were you, in this field for Fire, and find this swatch group right here, and go ahead and add it to your swatches as well. So just a quick note on the colors we'll be using in this logo. Let's go ahead and hide that swatch panel. Alright, great. So here's where things are going to start to get fun, because what I want to do is I want to create a flame shape right here on the inside of this negative space, but I don't want it to extend past this inside edge of our red shape. So let me go ahead and show you how I would begin doing that. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in nice and tight here, and let's go ahead and hit our Tab key to get a little bit more screen real estate. Now, in switching to my pen tool using the P keyboard shortcut, we can begin drawing a path here. But before I do that, I always switch over to my direct selection tool by hitting A on my keyboard. This is going to allow me to hot switch to this tool as I'm drawing a path and allow me to modify Bezier handles with this direct selection tool without having to stop drawing my path. So I always switch here and then back to my pen tool. And with that said, let's go ahead and begin drawing our path for this flame. Let's go ahead and start it, maybe we start it up here, kind of high on his ear. I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag and pull out some Bezier handles here. Let's come in and drop the next anchor point right about here. And I'm going to bring that curve around. That's good. We can always hold down our space bar and reposition that anchor point as we're pulling out those handles. Let's go ahead and pull it out to right about there. And then I'll come in and drop an anchor point right here. Now you can see here that we may have pulled those Bezier handles out just a little bit far on that that anchor point we drew before this one. We can always come back in and tweak this up just a little bit later. But let's go ahead and hold down our Alt key and bend this Bezier handle around this next curve so we can turn this tight corner. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out to about there. Let's go ahead and drop our next anchor point right about here. Reposition that if we need to. And I'm just going to go ahead and begin working just a little bit faster here, because hopefully you're sort of getting the hang of this. Drawing this path here, and I'm staying pretty close to what I have sketched out. So we'll just continue moving this around, dropping in these anchor points. If we need to reposition them again, you can hold down the space bar. And let's go ahead and drop this one right about here. Bend that around. We're almost got this path completed here. We'll drop that one in right about there. Bend that around, and let's go ahead and drop this one in right there at that corner piece. Now let me undo that one. I'm going to go ahead and use my smart guides to make sure I'm lining up right on top of that anchor point that's already in that corner. So we can take this path out right at that corner. Alright, great. So let me go ahead and hit my Tab key, bring back my panels. Now, let me change the color of this. We've got it as the same color as our background. Let me go ahead and change this to maybe an orange color. Now, obviously, this shape as it currently is not going to be usable to us. It's overlapping our tiger or our cat here, and it's got an open edge right here. This straight edge right here, it's not closed. That means we never came back to our original anchor point, clicked on that to close the shape. We're going to want to close this shape. So, in addition to that, I'd really like this flame to actually be on the opposite side. So how could we do that? Let's go ahead and maybe just drop in some anchor points over here and take this fill the other direction. Sort of like that. Now I'm going to mouse over my initial anchor point, go ahead and click on that to close that path, and now we've got our shape, and we've got, obviously, again, still not usable, but what we've got here, if we send this to the back, is a shape that's in the right spot if we trim away this extra. Now, I bet you can think of a couple of different ways using the Pathfinder panel to do that, can't you? Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and just zoom in here. And let's look at this. Now, if we use our divide Pathfinder right here, keep in mind that's going to punch holes everywhere there's a path. So we would actually trim his ear just a little bit right here, but we would be able to slowly whittle away just by deleting these extra shapes here. I tell you what, let's go ahead and use our minus front command on this. Let's go ahead and draw a marquee selection around both those two shapes. And let's use this minus front option right here. Now, in this case, I'm not going to use a compound shape. I'm going to go ahead and do this one in a destructive manner because I know I want to get rid of this extra stuff out here. So we'll just click that here. And we can see that there's no visible change. Well, let's see what happened here. Now, let's go ahead and take our little red shape right here. Let's send it to the back with a Control-Shift open bracket. And yeah, there's really no change there. This shape right here, this orange shape, is unscathed. So something's going on here that we haven't talked about yet. And this is a really good example of what we need to do to fix this. So let's take a look here at this shape. Remember, this is actually a compound shape, meaning that we modified this shape in a non-destructive manner, and now we're trying to use it to apply a shape mode to this shape right here. Well, it's not going to work that way. We're going to have to commit to these changes, and you know, at this point I'm okay with committing to these changes. It's not something that I'm opposed to. So let's go ahead and expand this compound shape by clicking on the expand button. And now let's go ahead and draw a marquee selection around both the orange and red shapes. And before we do that, let's go ahead and select just the red shape and copy that with a Control-C. Now we've got that copied to our clipboard, and we can now come in with both shapes selected and do the minus front option here. And you can see what we're left with. We've punched that red shape through the orange shape. Now again, we're left here with a group, so if we want to get rid of some of these shapes, we can just ungroup that with a Control-Shift-G. Select this shape right here. This is the one we don't want. Let's go ahead and delete that. And then we can paste back in our red shape by hitting Control-F. And it's going to paste it right back into the same spot that we copied that from. So you can see here we've trimmed down this flame shape to fit exactly where we want it to go. Now it's not going to have any little gaps in it at all, so that's much easier, much quicker than trying to trace along this inside edge with our pen tool. Saved us a lot of time right there. Alright, with that said, I may come in here in between lessons and draw one more shape right here like this and create sort of a flame right here down his cheek. Now, if you wanted to, give this a shot in between lessons. Try creating your own flame shape inside this white area right here, this negative space, and using the same technique that we just used, go ahead and fit that into this edge right here, flush to where there's no gaps at all. In the next lesson, we'll pick up where we're leaving off here. We'll shift our focus to the mouth here on our cat and begin bringing out some of the nice details here in his mouth.